When it comes to our military, the word sacrifice is often used. These men and women laid down their lives to make sure all Americans are free. And Master Sergeant Sean Clifton is a shining example of what true sacrifice means in the face of imminent danger.
It was Memorial Day, of all days to be injured. The mission was on Memorial Day in 2009. We were collecting intel on a senior Taliban commander in our province. He was responsible for the killing of multiple local Afghans and coalition forces, and he was a high-value target for us.
It's been 6 years since that day, the day Sean Clifton almost didn't make it home. But his journey to that point, to becoming a Special Forces sergeant, started long before that. I
was a young 19-year-old living on campus at Ohio State University, and just found myself not necessarily focusing on education and more into the social scene.
That was 1994, when Sean realized he needed to make a change in his life in order to have one. So he enlisted in the Army.
Those first few days in basic training, I really realized that this is where I need to be.
Eventually, he went back to school using the GI Bill and enlisted in the National Guard. Then came 9/11, the day that changed history and Sean's future.
September 11th, 2001, I was a conventional National Guard guy, and that day forever changed me. And it was that day that drove me into the Special Operations side.
To Sean, earning that Green Beret meant honoring those who came before him, and it meant that he would now be the one sacrificing his own life for the lives of so many others.
That Green Beret means everything to me. It embodies teamwork and perseverance and everything that got me through that day on the battlefield when I was injured.
That day, the one I mentioned at the start of Sean's story, that day he and his comrades went charging into hostile territory to take down the evil that we only hear about here in the U.S.
I was the first guy to go through the door to this particular compound, and that was the compound where there were over 20 pre-positioned fighters just waiting for our team to come through. I kicked in the door to that compound and basically walked into a wall of gunfire.
Sean was in bad shape, riddled with gunfire, but still he and his 12-man team kept their sights on the target and brought home more than they expected.
Those guys were able to, manage that battlefield leadership and continue to carry on with the mission, and ultimately we were able to get our high-value target along with a couple other senior leaders in that province.
But that's where Sean blacked out in a medical chopper being flown to the hospital.
My next clear memory is waking up at Walter Reed Army Medical Center in Washington, D.C. It was about 6 or 7 days later, and my wife was on one side and my mother's on the other side. And I was so drugged up and confused that I'm staring my wife in the face, and I think she's a nurse.
Not knowing the difference between a dream and reality, Sean says that feeling lasted nearly 2 years, far longer than the 5 months he spent at Walter Reed, where he had more than 20 surgeries. He worked tirelessly in hopes of getting back home to his wife and 2 young sons. He's since added a third to the mix. The people who inspired him to get back on his feet, literally.
So I'm hearing the stories of my son back home, and he's taking his first steps, and that inspires me to take my first steps. So I'm talking to my therapy team. I'm like, hey, I've got to get out in the hallway, and I've got to at least walk a couple steps today. My son took his first steps.
Eventually, Sean was transferred back home to Riverside Methodist, where he continued to heal physically and mentally. Today, he's heavily involved with the Wounded Warriors, and he's given himself a new mission.
My mission now is to target the good guys. And what I mean by that is find those veterans that are having problems. Find that wounded veteran that's in his basement and he's drinking his day away. I need to use those skills that I use for hunting bad guys, and I need to find my brothers that are having some problems. I need to lift them up and help them out.
As Master Sergeant Sean Clifton continues inspiring, he has a lot to show for it. Sean has received more than 20 medals and awards, including a Purple Heart and the Bronze Star Medal 3 times over. He is the definition of a patriot and a true hero.
Being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. It's a common theme echoed by many of the soldiers you're meeting today.